And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 150th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 558th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, December 12th, 2019. I'm your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud Banner Moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Martin takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's Banner Moment occurred for me on Wednesday morning. After spending so much time over the last 2 weeks engulfed in the details of Indiana's up, down, and back up again first 3 games against major conference competition, with so many reasons present for both encouragement and concern, I decided to take a step back and simplify how I was looking at it. So I asked myself this question. Based on where we were when the season started and what reasonable expectations were for this group, how have the results so far stacked up? Because we can project forward all we want, and we will. It's what we do when we discuss IU basketball. But the truth of the matter is that more than 30% of the regular season schedule is now in the books, so enough results are in that they matter. And if we look back to November, Indiana entered the season ranked number 34 in KenPom and a much more pessimistic number 58 in the preseason Torvik rankings. In terms of expectations, we all knew that Indiana needed to sweep its first 7 non-conference games. Then the consensus was that the Hoosiers needed to go at least 3-1 in their 4 other non-conference games against high major competition to feel good about the March resume they were building. So as we stand here on December 12th, what are the actual results? Well, after 10 games, with the Wisconsin debacle baked in, the Hoosiers are up 7 spots in KenPom to number 27 and up 19 spots in Torvik to number 39. Indiana's record sits at 9-1 overall, and the Hoosiers are 2-0 in those non-conference matchups against high major competition, including one of the neutral court games. And they've done it all with Rob Phinisee, their most important player, playing just 22.2% of the minutes. And when I looked at it in these simple and fair terms, I have to admit, I felt even better. Because the bottom line is this: are there warts and concerns with this IU team? You bet, and we've dissected them all here on this show. But those warts and concerns shouldn't overshadow what has objectively been a good start to the season for Indiana. Is it a start that suggests this group might be capable of hanging a banner this season? No. The program obviously still has a long way to go. So if your only path to joy as a fan is a Final Four or a Big Ten title, this season will almost surely disappoint you. But if you're still willing to be patient and meet the program where it's at right now, and if you see a return to the NCAA tournament as a fair objective for year 3 under Archie Miller and another stepping stone toward competing again at the highest levels of college hoops, then I think it's reasonable to feel really encouraged by these first 10 games and encouraged by the trajectory the program remains on with Archie Miller at the helm. Hopefully, it's a trajectory the team can stay on over the next 10 games and beyond. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, he is the Dan Hurley of Girls U Sports Coaching in Cincinnati, the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and the official bracketologist of the Assembly Hall.
He's on a website called Assembly Hall. You can find him on Twitter at Andy Bottoms. Andy Bottoms is his name, and he joins us now.
That is his name. Andy, what is your bottoms line on the last week in IU basketball?
Well, I wasn't on the show with you guys on Tuesday night, so I guess I'll give a couple quick thoughts on the UConn game, the aftermath of that. You guys touched on a lot of the good points during the show. The return of Rob Phinisee as a stabilizing force, picking up those key loose balls toward the end of the game was big. And that, to me, is what you look at really over these next few weeks. After the Nebraska game, I think they play one game over the next 2 weeks that gives them, one, a chance to get healthy before the meat of the Big Ten schedule. 2, gives guys like Rob some more practice time. Archie alluded to that after the game, that he really hadn't been able to practice very much. I think he's made that a fairly consistent statement throughout the season to this point. So I think those are positive things to be able to start to envision what this team looks like at full strength. And you see different guys being able to step up in different situations. And 2 of the guys who played really well in the second half of that game during key stretches, and Joey Brunk and Al Durham, really played poorly in the first half. And I think those guys are a little bit of a microcosm of the team at this point, because it really you see the flashes from them, from other guys, from the team as a whole. And then there are lulls where you score 4 points in the first 10 to 12 minutes of the second half against UConn. And somehow we're still in the game at that point, as well as after the poor start they had. So I think that's what I am looking for as we really move forward, is both from an individual and a team standpoint. How do the stretches of bad play get shorter and shorter, and the level of consistency, the level of intensity on the defensive end, how do those things not come and go as much as they seem to have come and go over the last few games? So Nebraska game, maybe a little bit of a step up to some of the non-conference home games that they've had, but really after that gets to be difficult again, as we've talked about so much. So, that's really going to be the key to, if we look at those numbers that you gave, another month from now, do you start to see more consistent stretches of play where they're playing at a high level longer, and the slow stretches seem like the real outlier when you get there. So that's kind of what I'm looking to see over the next few weeks, and hopefully the extra practice time and things like that will help bring that consistency out of the team.
And to my right, he is a senior writer for The Big Lead, an aspiring shot doctor who has edited his business cards to proudly proclaim that he will, quote, teach you how to shoot like Demezy Anderson, and a man who will disparage parents until he needs his own.
Being a parent's super important. Held you in my womb for 9 months. How long until that debt is paid? When you guys miss, it's fine because, we have kids. This overly super involved dad. I've got to text my parents real quick about something. So,
Ryan, what is your rant on the last week in IU basketball?
I didn't need them. I was just making sure they were still okay. I think that your intro kind of led me to something. It's, if we had said at the beginning of the year, Indiana's going to win 9 of its first 10, and the only loss is going to be on the road at Wisconsin, I think people would have been, not necessarily happy, but would have been okay with that. Win the games you're supposed to win, beat Florida State, beat UConn at MSG, and you just happen to lose where you always lose, at the Kohl Center in Wisconsin. Now, I understand the way they lost at Wisconsin was the concerning thing, not that they lost. And certainly there are issues there that we've, dove into head first after that game, and I think we were fairly heavily negative if you listen back to that show.
I got some comments about that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Got a few emails.
But I think that we had a right to be. I think that was a really, really poor showing for a lot of reasons that maybe the Kohl Center heightened the warts of the team and held down the successes that the team had. I don't think that's the team that Indiana has. I don't think that's a good example. Just like I don't think necessarily that the good stretches of Florida State are what this team is at its heart necessarily either. I think that there's sort of a happy medium there that they're going to come in the middle of. And I don't think that the bad stretches of the UConn game are what this team is either. I think that they're probably a little better than that. But I think that what we can say from this first 10 game stretch of the season, as you said, 30% of the season's games are essentially gone. And I think that there are things that we've learned about this team that are better than maybe we expected, things that maybe, like the outside shooting hasn't jumped up to the level I think we need it to, but we've also been missing one of our key outside, perimeter players. So I think that there's a lot of balance there that we still don't have all the answers. And I think last year we harped on it, don't judge this team until January, because that's really when you can start judging a team. I think this year's probably the same, probably some sort of the same refrain as they try and figure out starting rotations and try and figure out, do they need to change it now the guys are getting healthier, figure out the secondary rotations, figure out what they're going to do on the interior as Joey Brunk and Deron Davis have both struggled. Do you go with sort of a smaller but quicker and more athletic lineup on the interior with Trayce Jackson-Davis, Race Thompson, Jerome Hunter, guys like that? And I think the coaching staff is still figuring it out. So we'll learn something about them against Nebraska for sure, because how do they handle success? They didn't handle success well after the Florida State game. They got run out of the gym at Wisconsin. How will they handle the success of going on the road to a neutral environment? Yes, but a tough place to play in Madison Square Garden. How do they handle that win? And can they elevate their game instead of having to sort of be woken up by getting punched in the mouth? That'll be interesting to see. I think it's something to watch on Friday is how do they start the game? how do they react if they get punched in the mouth, and how do they finish the game and coming off of that win on Tuesday.
Sure hope we don't get punched in the mouth by Nebraska in
I know.
in our own gym. That'd be concerning in and of itself.
All
right.
That would never happen, Jared. We all know that.
Never. Okay, this week we're going to go through a couple of Hoosier headlines. We'll take a deeper look at the rotation, which Ryan kind of started talking about there, and then we'll answer a bunch of questions, as we always do. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to all of that, let's talk real quick about tickets, because you have a lot of options when it comes to where you get your sports tickets, and this is not an industry that is known for its growth, its innovation, and its customer friendliness. But with millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves that there's a better way. They built the fastest way to find tickets so that you can stop searching for the perfect seat and instead start enjoying it. Just look at the App Store. SeatGeek has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and the reason is because they deliver a better process for buying tickets. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web, and then they rate each deal on a scale of 1 to 10 with a color-coded system to show the value. Green dots mean good deals, red dots are overpriced, and then they display the tickets on an interactive seat map so you can see right where they are. As I've said, I was recently purchasing tickets to Hamilton at a venue I've never been to. Having that color-coded system was hugely helpful to me to actually know that I was getting a good value on the tickets. And every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. I use it for sports tickets, for concert tickets, whatever it is. That's why I feel comfortable recommending it to you, because I use it myself, and it always works exactly as it is supposed to, even better.
Can a brother get some coupons?
Yes, best of all, SeatGeek will give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code. So with Christmas coming up, if you want to get live event tickets as a stocking stuffer, download the SeatGeek app, use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $10 off your first purchase. That is promo code ASSEMBLY for $10 off your first purchase. All right, guys, let's go through a couple of headlines. Biggest storyline around the Big Ten so far early in the season is it's hard to win on the road in the Big Ten. Who knew? It's a crazy new development this season. So I will say, like, it's been, it's one of those things. Like, home teams are undefeated. I don't know tell me if that's changed tonight. I don't think that has changed, but as of this morning,
there's no conference games tonight, so you're still good.
Yeah, home teams were undefeated. Unfortunately, Indiana was one of only 3 teams that actually lost by 20 or more. Penn State and Minnesota both dropped big games. But Andy, like, are you looking at this as there's something crazy going on this year with home court advantage, or is this just maybe some clustering in the very small sample size at the beginning of what we always knew, which is that it's hard to win on the road in the Big Ten, but we don't know enough yet to know if this is like some crazy trend for this season that is bigger than normal?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you scroll through the games, I would guess if you went back, the home team would have been favored in nearly all of them anyway. So in that sense, people held serve. I think the ones that people would point out would be Maryland losing at Penn State. Maryland almost lost at home to Illinois, and Penn State has played better. And IU knows as well as anybody that it almost doesn't matter how good you are. Sometimes just weird things happen playing at Penn State. So that's potentially one that you look at. And then Wisconsin losing at Rutgers, but the Wisconsin team that showed up in that game looked a lot more like the Wisconsin team that had played leading up to the IU game, which perhaps says something about Rutgers, maybe says something about Wisconsin, maybe says something about IU.
Yeah, it could say something about all three, really.
Yeah. And it might not be good in any event. But and then Michigan losing at Illinois. I think if you take the positive side of what Illinois could be in some of those more optimistic projections about them, I think Michigan is going to be a bit up and down. And that was in general closer than the 9-point final margin would indicate. So I don't know that there's any overarching thing there. I do think you see in some of these teams, and it was the case with IU. I think it may have been the case with another team or two, that it's one of the first road trips, if not the first road trip that they've taken all season. And I think that plays into it a little bit as well. So you'll see some of those, hopefully not Friday, but Sunday you've got Purdue going on the road to Nebraska, and you've got Ohio State going on the road to Minnesota. So that streak could be broken pretty easily. And I think Michigan State plays at Northwestern at some point next week. So you might see a rash of those road teams win. I think it's been a little bit of the matchups. And in some ways, the Big Ten's done a nice job, whether on purpose or not, of getting some decent matchups among these early ones.
Well, it's also to think about, as you kind of alluded to, you're starting the conference season in December when these teams haven't necessarily been on the road yet. So they're walking into a road environment in a
Bear's
conference. Yeah, of course, in a conference game, as opposed to going on the road in a tournament or maybe a non-conference where you're expecting them to maybe lose if you go on the road and play, let's say Louisville, like Michigan did, or any of those situations. So I think that probably has something to do with it. And it's something we'll probably see as a pattern over the next couple of years as they have these conference games in early December before teams are really playing their best basketball. I mean, you saw, again, teams like Duke losing at home to a Stephen F. Austin. That happens early in the season. That usually doesn't happen in February when these teams have sort of, had a chance to play together and gotten better and incorporated all the new pieces.
Cameron, not a bear's mouth that night.
No, not that night.
Well, and I think you've seen Big Ten teams go on the road in other non-conference games and fare well. You had Ohio State win big at North Carolina. You had Michigan State won at Seton Hall. Even Penn State winning at Georgetown. I was just kind of thumbing through some of these. Iowa's up big at Ohio or at Iowa State tonight. So you've at least seen some Big Ten teams, and I think that's perhaps more telling that the conferences fared well at other difficult places to play against non-conference teams. So not ready to say it's a pattern quite yet, but the old adage about win your home games and steal a few on the road, I think will prove to be
always seems to work out. It always
really
seems
does.
to work out that way.
It does. So the other thing that I found interesting today regarding Trayce Jackson-Davis, he's a guy, obviously a 5-star prospect, Mr. Basketball, huge pedigree, obviously, but not someone that people had really talked about yet as an NBA prospect. I think most people think he'll get there, but most of the talk had been, 2 or 3 years, that kind of thing. And I think even with what we're about to talk about, that's still probably the safe bet. But for the first time, he did pop up on a big board for 2020. Sam Vecini from The Athletic, who I think we all like and really respect his work, he had Trayce at number 52. And I went back and forth with him and talked a little bit, and he said he still doesn't quite see him yet as a one-and-done guy because he hasn't, shown the ability to shoot and show some of those things. But, Ryan, I did find it interesting that he popped up there. And I think it's, number one, it's great for him. Like, I think it's nice to get that kind of recognition.
Sure.
And I think what it shows, and because I get asked this a lot, like, hey, Trayce is going to stay, right? And it's like, yeah, I think he will. But, you get a lot of people basically just saying, like, he's not ready for the NBA. He can't do this. He can't do that. And while I think that's right now, it's also important with guys to focus on what they can do with him. And what he's shown us is that he can rebound, he's coachable, he's competitive, he can pass, he's shown that he can do a lot of things. And I think the fact that he's shooting 75% from the free throw line is going to start suggesting to these NBA draft projection guys,
shot development will be there.
Yeah, he hasn't shown it, but he will. So my point in all this is don't be surprised if you start seeing that more. And if maybe this is more of a discussion down the line this season than we thought. And if so, that's a good, quote-unquote, problem to have.
I think that the thing holding Trayce to IU, even more than the shooting, will be the players that'll be around him. He seems to really be excited about Trey Galloway coming. He seems to really be excited about playing with Joey Bronk. He seems to be really, guys he knows and is friendly with. I think that as far as the shooting goes, they're right. He's not an outside shooter yet, but he's a guy who has developed every year to sort of, especially in high school. He hasn't done it much at the college level, but has sort of expanded his range a little bit every year. If you watch the film from his high school days, what I think the two things holding him back are the shooting and then ball handling. And I don't mean ball handling in the post where you take 1 or 2 dribbles and go around. It's like he's great at that. It's a matter of being out on the floor and handling the ball. And it's not that I don't think he can do it. I just think he doesn't have to right now. And so he's not showcasing it. Those two things, given his size, I mean, if he were 6'11", you'd be fine with the game he has right now. But he's shorter than that. He's smaller than that. He's a slight guy. He's tall and skinny and athletic. And
in relation to NBA players.
Right. I don't mean skinny and, like waif thin. He's just smaller than you're going to get at the next level. And so he's got to add some size. He's got to add the perimeter aspect of the game because of the position he's going to be asked to play at the next level as a stretch 4, or even sometimes as a wing, coming off a fast break. He's going to have to be able to prove that he can drive to the hoop and finish easily. That's if he wants to be a high pick. If he's cool with being, back into the first round, maybe an early second rounder, then yeah, I think that going after 1 year is fine with him. But I don't think that's the kind of guy Trayce is. I think he wants to develop into that star level player that's going to show it at the college level and then vault that into, a top 10, top 15 type lottery pick. Just everything I've read about him seems that way. And it's not like he needs to jump to the next level already for family considerations or anything like that. He's a guy who seems to be, really well thought out in that regard. So I think that he's a guy who you'll see for 2 years, but who knows if over the last half of the season, he makes a rapid, crazy level of development, maybe he does go. But I think that it just feels like Trayce is a guy who's here for a little bit and knows that and expects that, didn't come in thinking, well, if I have a good year, I'm gone. It didn't feel that way when he came.
Are you reporting a 2-year plan?
No, of course not, because I was literally told by somebody associated with the program about Noah Vonleh directly and told for sure 100%.
Man, you really seem defensive. He didn't bring up his name
I didn't
at
even
all.
mention
I just don't even.
Well, he only drops that, and he uses that drop every 30
Romeo
minutes.
Langford was on a 2-year plan.
Yeah, I didn't say that about Romeo Langford. Never did. I know that for a fact. That doesn't sound like me, Jared.
Romeo Langford was on a 2-year plan.
Yeah,
got the receipts on that one.
But no, it feels like he's, it feels different than Romeo, we'll say. It just feels like he's here to develop, and he trusts the guys in charge to develop him to that next level.
I agree. Yeah, if I had to bet on it, I would say he'll be here, for a couple of years. But this was the first time he showed up, so it's a good time to at least broach the subject, and I guess just start preparing for it to happen more because, he's playing really well, and he's showing some things that do translate to the next level, even if he's got some things to work on. Andy, you want the last word on this?
Well, I think what you like to see is, given the knocks about or the question marks about his game in terms of outside shooting, he's not forcing anything to try to prove to people that he can answer those questions over the course of the game. I think I only remember him taking one shot really outside of the lane, and that was as the shot clock was running down, which he made, I believe.
That was awesome.
And so I think you like that as you look at him and see him. The way he plays doesn't suggest he has his eye on those things and trying to do things for the direct purpose of impressing scouts and folks like that. And if you believe that to be the case and that I'm not reading too much into it, then I think that's a positive sign. And you can see where there's a natural progression for him to get his feet wet, do the things this year that he really does well that translate immediately, and continue to work on his body, work on his game, and get himself into a situation where he could play himself into the first round. Now, to your point, maybe he gets in Big Ten competition and questions about physicality and those kinds of things get answered in a positive way, and he makes a different decision. That remains to be seen. But I think it's relatively easy to tell yourself a story now and a natural trajectory for where he's going that it would make sense for him to be there. But again, I think we've always made it a point to not begrudge anyone's decision in that standpoint as they've gone through with the program. And if he plays well enough for that to be a reasonable consideration, that's a good thing for IU and that's a good thing for him. And you just kind of sort that out once or if it gets to that point.
Agreed. All right, coming up, we are going to talk about the rotation. Archie says that he is committed to rolling 11 deep. Is that smart? Is that sustainable? And how will Rob Finney's return to health, everybody knock on wood, influence that? We will discuss it next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Nice to see you all here. Yes, it was Sam Bassini from The Athletic who had him at 52nd. That's the only place I've seen him so far.
Yeah.
So.
And Sam's really good.
Sam said he's, he feels like he's probably in early on him, but, so we'll see. So Ryan, big news for you tomorrow. Do you want to share, or are you going to keep that a secret? I don't want to spill the beans.
You guys would make fun of me on Twitter anyway, so it's going to be out. I'm playing in a local celebrity soccer game tomorrow where it's old media versus new media. And somehow I'm on the old media team. I don't exactly know how that happened. I work for a website and have a podcast and / radio show, I guess. So yeah, we're It's interesting. That's an interesting call by them to put me on that one. And I also
a celebrity.
As we've discussed on this show, I've also annihilated my ankle a few weeks ago. So I'm not actually even going to get to play. I'm going to be a sort of like a bench coach, but I'm on the roster.
You know, there's like A-list celebrities, and there's like where would you place yourself if you had to give yourself?
Who would you? Yeah, okay. In this game, who would you place highest on the list of celebrities? That's
I don't even know.
In this game.
I have not even seen the roster. I just know I'm on, and my buddy,
Jared and I really wanted to compare you to that person, so I feel like you're holding out, and you actually know who it would be, and then
no, it's funny. It's so as some of you know, I host morning radio occasionally. I fill in on the morning show here on 97.3 The Fan, and one of the guys I co-host with is the captain of the old media team, and so he pulled me in. And given my Chargers takes over the years, I've got a bit of a following in San Diego, not surprisingly, among people who absolutely hate Dean Spanos. So, which is quite a sizable number of San Diegans, shockingly.
I think that'd be most of the city.
So, yeah.
All of Phillip Rivers' children.
Yeah. So yeah, he thought of me as a fill-in, and my buddy who hosted, who's a co-host on The Hangover, my old radio show, is on the other team. So, if I do get on the field, I'm just going to give him a hip check into the boards. But other than that, because it's indoor soccer, so it's 6-on-6, and there's boards. It's a really bad idea to let media people do this, because there are some grudges that are going to be laid out there.
Are there going to be spectators there? Like, are there going to be a lot of people?
It's halftime of an indoor soccer game of the local indoor soccer team, who draws pretty well. So yeah, no, there's going to be people watching. That's why I said, unfortunately, I won't be playing, but because my, doctor said not to. So we can say it's for other reasons, but it's my really bad ankle. So
no, I saw the picture of the ankle.
Your
ankle might be on a 2-year plan right now.
Seriously, I'm gonna have to start doing physical therapy. It's bad. So, but yes, I'm gonna be out there in a jersey and everything, cheering on old media, I guess.
Man, you're old media.
I know.
Gosh, old media. Okay,
yeah.
Well, all right. Let's talk rotation here next.
Yep.
How do we want to structure this? We got a bunch of questions about it. I feel like I don't really need to read all these questions. Let's just kind of hit the topic, and then I'll look at these questions, and if there's an angle that we don't get to, I'll try and fill it in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Coach called me a filler celebrity. Yes. Absolutely. I do not deny that. So when somebody at work was like, who's going to be in this? I was like, I don't know, probably like 300 people turned it down, and they stuck on me. So we'll see.
Well, we wish you luck.
I appreciate
you're
it.
an A-list celebrity in our eyes.
I appreciate it, guys. Hopefully nobody dies.
Hopefully. That would not be good. Not be good. All right, let's go to segment 2 here. All right.
This is Burdell Jones. What's better than an epic buzzer beater? The full court dribble and a perfectly placed pass to set it all up. And of course celebrating with Hoosier Nation afterwards. So join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Burdell. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mobbers during our unedited live broadcasts, or watch those replays and see all the between segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and celebrity Ryan Phillips. If you watch the YouTube live broadcast of this one, you'll understand what that is in reference to. So guys, we had a lot of questions this week about the rotation, stemming from what we saw in the UConn game and what we've seen, which is Archie basically playing every scholarship player who's available every game. And last game was the first time we've had all 11 guys available. Hallelujah for that. And he obviously played everybody. And he was asked about it after the game, and he said something that I thought was really interesting. In talking about being committed to playing 11 deep, he said, quote, "We just have to be really mindful around each other every single day of how hard it is to coexist with 11 players that expect to play. But if we're about the right things and we play the right way and it's about the win, you know at the end of the day the team has a chance to be pretty good," unquote. So my question to you, Andy, to start is, we often see teams play with an expanded rotation early and it shortens as the season goes down. To me, the safe bet would still be on that happening. And Archie has been a guy during his career that has tended to play smaller rotations, but he just seemed very adamant about playing 11 guys. And so is that something that is realistic? Is it smart? And do you worry all about what he kind of hinted at, which is that if you've got 11 guys expecting to play every game, there may not be minutes to go around, and how do you manage those expectations?
It's an interesting one because you look at even the UConn game, there were stretches toward the end. You guys alluded to this after the show of Trayce not being in the game for a fairly long stretch toward the end. And it feels a little bit like what we talked about with the starting lineup. We talked about how what we've seen of Archie is that if he finds something that seems to be, even if it might not be working, he seems reluctant to change that. And I think the same thing happens when he gets a group of guys on the court who seem to be playing well together in key stretches. He's very much willing to ride them out. And as someone who did lineup analysis during the Tom Crean era, I can suggest to you that is not something that I had grown accustomed to in recent years with the program. So I think you see that, and that to me suggests he is committed to doing that. And for the most part, it's been effective. I think there were questions that we had, but we talked about the Joey Brunk and Al Durham, the way they played. He didn't turn away from those guys, even when a lot of fans, us included, would have said, I don't know that this makes a ton of sense. And so I think if you view it on a game-by-game scenario and say everybody's going to get, or most of the 11 guys are going to get some kind of chance, and then if something works, guys are going to be out there, I guess that's how you view it. I still would imagine that by the end it narrows down a little bit, but I would also question, as you look at it now, if you think about the guys that we would have said were end of the rotation guys coming into the season, what have they really done to suggest that they don't deserve time? Armaan Franklin was a guy we didn't know a ton about. He played well out of necessity at times so far, but had some good moments in the UConn game, has had good moments in some of the tougher games, has struggled as you'd expect a freshman to do. Demezi has really picked things up. Race Thompson, a lot of people are clamoring to see more playing time from him. By a lot of people, I mean Ryan and the one person who sent in the question. But I think
Ryan actually sent in that question under an assumed name.
Entirely
I did
possible.
not, although I would. I probably wouldn't have been it if I did, but I didn't do this one. I promise.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he there's things he's done that have warranted more minutes. You've got Jerome Hunter who's getting back, and he showed some flashes in that game. So, I think if you want to answer this question to say I don't think playing 11 is the right thing to do, you've got to at some point be able to pinpoint guys who you don't think deserve those opportunities, and maybe over the course of the season that happens. And Duran maybe is that guy, but he had a few moments in that game. So I think if you say you don't think he should play 11 guys, then you better go figure out who he's not going to play. And I don't think that, which is a good thing, is an easy decision. It's not a decision he's had to make, though, because not everybody has been healthy until the UConn game. So
yeah,
it's a little bit hard to figure out how that all shakes itself out.
And let's also be realistic about what it might look like. Because number one, hopefully Rob is back and he's taken a good chunk of minutes. So that's, going to be less minutes for some guys. But, Ryan, what it has really looked like, even with every guy playing, sometimes it's a guy only playing 4, 5, 6 minutes and needing to really make an impact. Like we saw Race play 4 against UConn. Duran has often just played a few minutes. And so, number one, that might be it, where everybody's playing. But some guys are getting shorter stints. And it may just be matchup based. There are going to be some games where Duran just isn't really a good fit. But it was clear that the coaching staff... Well, same with Brunk, but it was clear that the coaching staff saw something they liked offensively, getting the ball on the block, because they kept putting Brunk in there, they kept putting Duran in there, and giving them chances on the block. And, they didn't convert efficiently. Brunk had his one stretch, but it was clearly something in the game plan from a strategic, perspective, an opening that they saw there. And so they played those guys. Other games, it might be, you might not be able to put those guys out there. So it might not be something where it's like, okay, every single game, all 11 guys are getting their allotment of minutes, but it's something where as you go through the season, you're using them regularly, just kind of in different amounts based on the matchups and based on who's got the hot hand in any given game.
Yeah, I think that's the way you have to do it. And you're going to face different types of teams that do different things. And again, I mean, I know I've harped on Trayce Thompson, but just given the matchups we're going to see this year, it's going to be probably to the team's benefit to have a maybe smaller but quicker, more athletic defender down in the block along with Trayce Jackson-Davis than having Brunk or Deron Davis out there. And so when I refer to him, I'm referring to, a guy who can guard in the post, but when his post player goes out on the perimeter, he can also go out on the perimeter and not hurt you out there, as we've seen Brunk and Davis do when they're put in pick and roll action. He's a guy who can actually defend the pick and roll much better than they can and quicker, and not have to go so far out on his hedges, and can recover and all that. So I think, and Trayce Jackson-Davis can do that as well. So you're seeing him be put on bigger players defensively. That's going to be something they're going to have to adjust to. And as far as the playing 11 guys, if 11, as Andy said, if 11 guys are earning minutes, that's the number of guys who should play. And it just depends on them earning minutes. And that gives you the flexibility in a game that if you put a guy in and he's not playing well, because this other guy's been playing minutes, we can give him more minutes. If a guy's just sitting on the bench cold for 3 weeks and the guy ahead of him is not giving you what you want in a game, and you bring a guy off the bench who hasn't played in games, do you really expect much from him? So I think actually getting guys in the game and getting them involved and in the flow, even if it's for 4, 6, 8 minutes, that helps you in the long term when maybe somebody doesn't show up for a road game at Wisconsin or something like that. You can, change lines, put another guy out there who's had some experience, and then expand how many minutes he can play. So we'll see. It's an ambitious project to play 11 guys. It certainly is. But as we've seen, guys that maybe we thought wouldn't earn minutes, like Demezy Anderson, like Armand Franklin, and maybe they'd be the guys deep on the bench who came in blowouts, they're earning minutes. And it's different than we thought weeks ago. At this point, we probably thought Deron Davis may be playing a little bit more. He hasn't been, but you've also seen flashes to where maybe he's starting to play a little better and maybe he's starting to move a little better. I mean, obviously didn't finish at the rim really well against UConn, but he also made some opportunities for himself. And in a couple of weeks, those might be baskets that he makes that help you win a game. So I think that right now you've got a lot of guys, and I assume guys like Joey Brunk, who are still in the starting lineup, are earning a lot of their minutes in practice as well. And that's always been a very big thing for Archie, is if you practice well, you're going to play. And so these guys, if they're earning minutes, you've got to reward them for that, or else, whatever you're telling them about earning minutes is not holding water. If you're earning minutes, you got to get in there. You got to give them a chance to play.
So the one question might be, okay, so you're going to play everybody, and that's great, and that all sounds good in theory, but we know how important chemistry and communication is with lineups. So, and Coach kind of alluded to this in the chat, Andy, where it's like, okay, so maybe you're playing, all 11 guys, and yes, Ryan, to your point, like maybe in some games a guy's not playing well, you put in somebody else, but you probably want to have some different types of lineups for different types of games that you go to that they've played together, like
continuity,
like a smaller lineup, a bigger lineup, like some guys that have really played together, so that way when they get out there, they've got that continuity and they've got that chemistry. And again, maybe you're not going to use one for a couple games because the matchup doesn't dictate it, but then you go back to it because now you're facing Penn State with Mike Watkins and Lamar Stevens, and you need some more size in there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you just, at this point, I would 100% agree with the notion that you need to try to get in at least some combinations of guys who you would like to have regularly out there. You see NBA teams do that a lot, where there's, the second unit, or these guys typically play together, and you have a little bit more set rotations in some of those scenarios. I think the challenge with doing that so far for this team is that, are you going to have everybody healthy enough that you can do that? But I do think those are some things that I talked about at the beginning. You've got a couple weeks here where you've only got one game. Does this provide you some of that opportunity as you get guys healthy to do that? So I think that's important. I just don't know that a ton of opportunity to do that has existed thus far, and doing it on the fly in a sense during games is not really the ideal scenario to do that with. But I think some of that starts to emerge. I think we've seen that a little bit already with some of those lineups that have been effective with Trayce at the 5 and Justin at the 4 and a guy like a Demezi with them and then 2 more traditional guards. I do think you've started to see some patterns emerge in that regard. I think it's really the backcourt piece that's the interesting component of that with Rob back is how you dish out those minutes. Do you start to see more 3-guard sets with he and Devonte and Al? That was something we talked about a ton coming into the season, but the number of games where all 3 of those guys have really been healthy has been minimal. So do you need to see some more and get those guys working together? But at least they would seem to have some chemistry from a year ago. So I think if you're able to keep guys healthy, you can start to build some of that up that I think everybody would agree you need to do. But that is somewhat dependent upon health. And I would argue they haven't really had much of a chance to do that thus far for the same reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's several guys who barely practiced in the month of November. I mean, they're a little behind on that development.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, we knew how important improving the 3-point shooting would be coming into the year, and Indiana right now is shooting 34.4%, which is 121st in the country.
What
pretty
was
good.
Last year?
Overall, it was 31.2, but in Big Ten play, it was like 27. It was awful.
So the percentage is decently up.
Have gone up
and the line moved back too.
Yeah, and it's gone up with Rob not playing much. He's one of your better 3-point shooters, and Devonte missing some time. So that's a good sign because I agree. I mean, I think at some point we'll be able to see more of those lineups with Rob, Al, and Devonte, which is going to help this team space the floor some, which they haven't really had.
Well, and I think Rob is a guy who can create some of those shots for other guys.
Yes.
The others
for sure
who have handled the ball aren't necessarily by no means our traditional pass first type point guard. So if you see him, he's shown a good ability to get to the basket and score for himself. I would imagine that the number of shots that are off the catch going forward, if he's in there, go up quite a bit as opposed to, it feels like a lot of the ones that have been hit have been more off the dribble shot clock situations, just not desperation necessarily, but a lot of them, at least anecdotally in my head, feel like they were not necessarily in the general flow of the offense.
And by the way, shooting that well with Armand and Jerome Hunter combining to go 7 of 42, which I think is just young guys, needing to get their feet under them and get comfortable shooting the ball, because I think both of those guys project to be better shooters than that. Final question on this, Ryan, just to kind of cover all the bases that people asked. What is, if you had to kind of trim this rotation down, just think of a general matchup, nothing specific. What would be kind of the 5-man lineup and the 2 or 3 guys that you have the most confidence in right now that you would kind of like to see get the most time?
I think the 5-man lineup, the starting 5, I'd probably go with Rob, Devonte, and Al on the perimeter, and then go Justin and Trayce in the interior, just because we've seen so many defensive problems with Joey Bronke. Kudos to him for stepping up. We talked about stepping up in the second half and playing very well, but I just feel like they're hamstrung defensively with him on the floor. And he doesn't give you enough offensively to sort of, give you the boost you need to balance that out. And then the guys off the bench, I would like, I think you have to have Joey off the bench. And then again, for the issue of,
it gets hard.
It does. And the issue of defense in the post, I would say Race Thompson, because I think he's the second best defender on the post in there. And then I think you've got to probably put Jerome Hunter because of what he can do. He's developing defensively, and he's a guy who can get you points offensively. So, and I think
the potential payoff makes it worth playing
exactly
stakes with him right now.
Right. And so really the guys I would cut down a little bit now that Rob's back, or probably Armand Franklin's going to see his minutes go down a little at least. But, Demezi, I guess, would probably have to go down a little bit, though his effort's been much better and he's made some shots. If you're having just an 8-man rotation, though, I think those are the guys that are going to see their minutes drop, and then Duran, of course. So, I mean, but there's other guys in the mix, too. I just think
how nice is it?
This team is built to play a lot more guys. It just is. You're getting contributions from so many guys.
And I guess part of my point in ending it with that question is, how nice is it to be going through the roster and it be really hard to trim it down? Because you've got 11 legitimate guys, and so that is, this team may not have kind of the elite top end, the amount of elite top end guys that you would want, but the roster overall is just in a much better shape with just being filled with good basketball players, and guys who can do stuff when they get out there. So, they've all got their issues. None of them are perfect, but it's nice to have that many options because it's felt like for a while, once you get past kind of those top guys, you're really kind of stretching with who you give minutes to.
Well, and how many times even last year did we talk about this with Juwan in terms of fouls? Like you just can't. You had guys you could not afford to get fouls because the drop off was too big from who was going to come in. And yes, the drop off from if Trayce goes out and gets 2 fouls early and they put in Race Thompson for him, obviously that's a large drop off. But what these games have shown, even these Florida State and UConn games specifically, different guys have been able to really step up in different situations. And you don't, to me, then have guys who are pacing themselves, trying to, keep themselves out of foul trouble, doing whatever. You got everybody who can go full out for whatever time they're in there. And then you get taken out and the production doesn't fall off the map once
That's
you,
where that
once
killed
you get
us
those
at
guys.
the starts of games last year.
Huge benefit.
Yeah, you just got no place else to turn
to
do some of those things. So
I mean, think about last year when Duran got in early foul trouble, or whoever it was, Juwan Morgan, got in early foul trouble. You felt like the game was over because you had nobody who could come in and step up.
Well, and then he at times had to play so tentative,
Yep.
particularly defensively, that it really hurt you in that regard. So you weren't doing anybody any favors in that scenario. So it's a good problem to have, like you said, and we'll just have to see what happens, I guess.
Yep. All right, coming up in our final segment, we're going to answer your questions, including one about whether Archie would recruit a player like Devonte Green and what an acceptable one-loss record would be over the next 6 games, plus another mediocre question. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right.
Wow, the United States is getting hammered at the President's Cup right now in golf. It's the international version of the Ryder Cup.
Are they getting drunk, hammered, or beaten badly?
Getting destroyed. They haven't lost that since the fall of 1998. And they're
something fitting about. I'm not going to say it.
They're down 4-1, and they're
lightly.
losing.
Shut up.
They're
Jared.
down 4-1
Jared.
to the international team, and they're losing 3 matches right now. So it'll be 7-1 if these play out.
Wow.
It's the Ryder Cup, but it's against an international team, not a European team. So.
Oh. Yes. Okay. So we'll get a few of these questions. Are you guys good to hang around after and just plow through the other questions that we have?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
No, I can for a little bit too.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't need to linger too long on them, but there's some good ones, so we can at least give them some.
Jay
thoughts.
gave you another mediocre one, huh?
Yeah, but this one's like truly mediocre. I mean, it like he even
Before
said
we've just been lying.
He said the mediocre question didn't have its usual depth this week. Like it's he fired it off in like 15 seconds. It's okay. It's all right. He does call you out though, so.
No, all right.
That's not.
Let's go, Jay. What you got, buddy? Not even gonna read it before it goes up. Let's do this.
I think you not reading something from him might really be at the heart of the question.
It's possible.
That is very true. Okay.
Let's go.
Okay.
I'm ready.
I know. I got to stop laughing first, or I'm going to start laughing.
Fired up.
It goes on.
Fired up.
I don't want to giggle through the intro. All right, here we go.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Thank you, Jordan. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I am Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com to get on that list. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. All right, time for the mailbag. All of these questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com/community. The first one from Jay. He wants to know, why is Ryan a coward? He failed to send me his conference-only predictions that we did last week. Ryan,
Well,
why are you a coward?
Sorry, I didn't pick up on that. Apologies. I didn't have a chance to fill that out, Jay.
Jay, apparently new to the show, thinks that you listen to old episodes and that you check your email, neither of which happened.
I do check my email, but usually just don't pay attention when it comes from you. It's I have to listen to
a lot of emails. I get that you tune them out.
It's a thing. I'm just kidding. No, I have to pay attention to so much other sports stuff that sometimes when I'm off the show, I don't have a chance to listen. I'm sorry.
Many celebrities do not.
Yeah. You know,
do not do that.
I just feel like
Q-list celebrities don't have time.
I'm kind of above your questions at this point, Jay. I'm sorry, buddy. Sorry.
All right, let's move on to the next.
Okay, let's go. Okay, so Tim says, I know Archie values Devonte Green as a player. He's even on record as saying, quote, he needs to be out there to give us a chance to win. But would Archie Miller ever recruit a Devonte Green? Ryan, what do you think?
I don't know. Is he from the upper Midwest? Because probably yes, if he was. If it's the inside out thing, and Devonte was a good player in high school. No, I've heard this, that, you know, Archie got stuck with Devonte and things like that. Devonte hasn't left. Coaches push players out if they're not, you know, if they don't like them or they don't get along with them. And Archie has done nothing but talk great about Devonte for the last year or so. You know, over the offseason, talked about how key he was to the team and all that stuff. You know, I don't know if Archie Miller would recruit Devonte Green, but he seems to enjoy having him around. And they made him a captain this year. So
I will say he hasn't targeted a recruit from out of state that was ranked that low as Devonte.
No.
So, you know, it seems like when they've gone out of state, they've kind of set their sights a little bit higher.
But that's their recruiting theory is a little different though, too, is they're targeting players. That's why I said, is he from the upper Midwest? You know, is he from Indiana, Minnesota, Michigan? You know,
like I don't know if he recruits Devonte Green from New York, but he's certainly doing his best to get the most out of him. And that's, you know, really the thing that matters the most. So.
Yeah. And he, you know, again, if he didn't like him, you wouldn't have him.
Mm-hmm. Andy, do you have anything that you want to throw in on that?
No, I mean, I think the question is born out of, I guess I should say yes, because I'm going to answer it. I think the question is born out of the flashiness, I guess I would say, of his play, and that doesn't really fit with a lot of the other guys they had. So I think if you answer,
especially if you look at Armon and Rob, they're completely different players.
I think if you answered no, I don't necessarily view it as a negative thing. I think he's done as well as he could trying to not rein in Devonte to the point when the things that make him a good basketball player, he doesn't feel empowered to do. But I think in general, if you look at the overall characteristic types of games, those kinds of things that guys have, I guess I'd be inclined, in conjunction, Jared, with what you said, I guess I'd be inclined to say no, which I don't know is necessarily a negative either way, but I think that's where the question comes from ultimately.
Yeah. Let's see. The next question. Oh yeah. From Jim Tom Hoosier. Do you think we can win in the Big Ten without better 3-point shooting, Ryan?
Probably not. Win in the Big Ten? Okay, I thought it said win the Big Ten.
No, win in the Big Ten.
Yes, I think shooting at this percentage right now, yeah, you can win games in the Big Ten if you defend and get to the free throw line. Two things this team's really going to try and do is defend and get to the free throw line. I think you can definitely win. Can you win the Big Ten, be a competitor nationally, you know, those things? No, you probably got to shoot it a little better. Not demonstrably better, but a few percentage points better. You got to make a few more here and there. I just think that's modern basketball, and it's the reason you go after a guy like Anthony Leal to come in and start knocking down threes for you, and the reason why you improve at 3-point shooting, as this team has done. But yeah, you can win in the Big Ten shooting at, what are they? You said, Jared, 34 about 34. Right now. You get between 34 and 37, you're happy.
Yeah. Okay, next question from Alex. Andy, what is an acceptable win-loss record in the next 6 games? So Indiana plays Nebraska, Notre Dame, Arkansas, at Maryland, home versus Northwestern, and home versus Ohio State. What's interesting is what looms after that. A 6-game stretch at Rutgers, at Nebraska, home against Michigan State, home against Maryland, at Penn State, at Ohio State. So if you go through all kind of the Ken Pom single game projections there, it has IU at 6-6 in that stretch.
We're talking about the next 6, right?
Right, but his question was about the next 6, but it's interesting to set the stage because you're going to probably take on some losses in the 6 games after that. So Andy, what do you think is an acceptable one-loss record over these next 6?
I feel like you'd like to be 4-2. Nebraska and Northwestern are games that you cannot lose at home. So then it really comes down to the others. And I feel like Notre Dame has not played particularly well. And then Arkansas has been a bit of a surprise. I feel like those are games that you can win and maybe even find a way to split the others. Ohio State just looks really good right now. And going to Maryland is, we talked about how hard it has been for teams to win on the road. Illinois did go in there and play relatively well. But they do present some challenges. I think the Trayce Jackson-Davis and Jalen Smith matchup will be an interesting one to watch. But that's a tough road trip from a team that's ranked really highly. So I feel like 4-2. I hate to say minimum, but I think given the stretch after that, I feel like you want to be at least 4-2. Maybe you get one of those and you end up 5-1.
Yeah, 3-3 is the bare minimum. To
I'd say 4-2
feel
as well.
To not be like just jumping overboard. 4-2, you feel good, and 5-1, you feel ecstatic.
Yeah, I think the next 3 you got to win. I really do feel the next 3 you got to win. Maryland on the road, you don't expect that to be a win, and then you got to beat Northwestern at home this year. I mean, any year really. I don't know why I said this year, but any year really. And then Ohio State comes in, especially if they're still highly ranked. That's a game at Assembly Hall that you expect to be a rocking environment, and go nuts.
Yep.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
All right, that's going to do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing much of the music that you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We will talk to you again Friday night after IU Nebraska. Until then,
take it from me, Christian Wofford. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. Go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
I have a mad crush on Coach Roberts.
All right.
One thing I want to say before people start getting out of here, I know people are going to stick around for questions, but if you have a chance this year, donate to the V Foundation. We didn't talk about that on Tuesday. I donate every year. It's a great charity that
we did forget to talk about that.
And it's a great charity where almost all of the board members do it for free as a charity. They don't steal money from the company or anything like that. It's always rated as one of the better charities, and it's a great charity to give to. I have somebody give me that as a gift for Christmas every year. I hand it out to people. I think it's a great donation if you want to do one this December. I think next year we should do a t-shirt deal with Home Field Apparel for it, like an F Cancer thing or something, and try and sell those and give the money. I think that'd be a good thing to do.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right, let's think about that.
Sure.
It's a good idea. Really good idea.
That's
a Q list idea right there. That's
there you go. Not all of my ideas are terrible. Just most of them, but not all of them.
That's solid. Okay, so let's run through a few of these other questions. We didn't actually get to Jay's mediocre question of the week. His actual question
that wasn't
was,
it.
No, he sent in several. His other question was,
I thought that question that he asked was a good one. That was above mediocre.
Why Ryan is a coward? I mean, that's always a great question. With a fully healthy roster, how many minutes a game do you think Trayce plays at the 5 without Brunk, Davis, or Race? It seems like it should be as many as he can handle.
It's going to depend on the matchup, I think, mostly. Yeah. Let's be real. But I 10 to 12, something like that. He's right. As many as he can handle. If he can handle that defensively and offensively, I think that more and more. I tend to think that he's going to play more. If they go small, he's going to play more 4, and Race would be the guy kind of mixing it up at the 5. I think that's what frees him up the most. That's why I've been saying, I mean, I know, again, I'm harping on Race Thompson, but I think they've played their best on the interior when those two have been paired up together. And I've been saying that for weeks, and we haven't seen it as much in the last couple games because, again, you're getting guys healthy and having to mix up lineups. But defensively, that's when we look our best on the interior, I think.
And maybe it's time to just stop putting positions, stop deferring to guys by numbers, and just call everybody B. Everybody's B for basketball player.
That's enough.
Stop it. Stop it.
That is how you're a champion.
Stop it.
I don't think we'd mentioned that yet on the show. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Maybe because it was so so absurdly stupid.
Okay, you know what? I am actually.
Don't do this.
I made fun of it. I am actually going to defend him on it because it is kind of a trend in basketball, and with recruiting, branding yourself differently can give you something to sell. Same thing.
Just don't turn in a position. You don't have to call him a basketball player. Come on.
I'm just saying. I'm going to defend the idea of his getting out in front of that and being able to sell that to. I think it's silly, but as someone who's in marketing, I am actually going to defend him on it.
Put everyone as a 3. Just everyone's a 3. They're halfway between 1 and a 5, somewhere in there.
Okay, sorry. Little tangent there.
You know what? Maybe beat Chaminade by more than 3. How about that?
Okay.
Every year, Chaminade gives somebody a game. Every year, you guys are going to see it in person next year.
It's
gonna be fun.
Anyway,
are you guys both going to try and go to that?
I doubt that.
I don't know. I mean, try yes, but so we'll see. We will see. It would be fun.
Better start getting on that now.
I know.
You're out. You're gonna need to start getting some plane reservations going.
Yeah, I know. Coach is.
Well, then I guess
Coach is booing me in the chat.
I'm just hosting I'm hosting the AC meetup alone in Maui. Oh yeah, Coach would go. Come on.
I'm sure his. I'd love to hear his thoughts on the B. That would be outstanding.
That's
Coach. Okay. No, Coach is not in. He's not in for the B.
All right. Anyway, continue. Let's move on.
Tom says, what do you think of the prospects for the half-court offense? The return of Finney will undoubtedly help, but what else do you think is needed to make it a strength for the team? You know, I would say one thing that'll help is getting some consistency from Joey and Duran on the block as scorers. That will certainly help because those guys have not been as efficient as was expected in the whole inside-out game that we thought that we might have, not only for scoring on the block, but also in terms of creating three-pointers, hasn't really been there consistently. And so that's one thing that
we haven't been very good at passing out of doubles either. And
no, we haven't, and that's something I thought we would be better at that we haven't really seen. So that's.
I think there's also, I mean, there's probably no shortage. I think that the shooting is one. We talked about that earlier. How Rob helps that. I mean, they're running a lot of different actions and having guys cut, but very seldom does it feel like they're actually hitting the cutter with the pass. So you're running a lot of stuff, but you're not really getting anybody. There was a couple times in the UConn game. I think Demizi made a nice pass to somebody on the run. Who was really cutting toward the hoop, and they got a basket.
It's actually our lowest efficiency play type in Synergy is cutters.
Yeah, but I think at times they're just not. They're either a step late or they're not hitting the ones that are actually open. It felt like there were opportunities for that against UConn at times, especially the way UConn was really overplaying everything on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, look, I also just think having Rob out there consistently and getting some consistent practice time with everybody, that in and of itself is going to help the half-court offense some. Ryan, which is more impressive? IU wins a rock fight against UConn or Victor Oladipo makes the Final Five in The Masked Singer? You're a pop culture guy.
I have never watched that show, but we all know Victor can sing. I'd say the win over UConn more impressive because Victor, he's cut an album before. He's a professional singer. He should be disqualified from that.
I know,
right?
Just the Final Five. Yeah, I feel like that would be. I mean, depending upon who else they have, I suppose. But yeah, I would agree.
Andy, which Big Ten team will perform better in conference than it has in its non-conference schedule so far, and which will do the opposite? This is from JD. That last question was from Kent, by the way.
Oh boy.
Do you have any hot Big Ten opinions?
So the question was, Big Ten team will perform better in conference.
Do we feel better about Illinois based on how they've played? Taking Maryland, down to the wire and then beating Michigan at home. Do we feel better about them, or the fact that that they blew that lead against Maryland and kind of looked frantic at times against Michigan? Do we not feel good about them?
I just feel like they're going to be inconsistent. I think you saw from them why people could get excited about them, but also you saw some of the inconsistencies that you'd have. I don't know. Nobody really had a bad non-conference necessarily that I can.
Can I suggest one?
I guess maybe Purdue. Well, but they still had a couple good wins against VCU and Virginia. They don't have bad losses. Yeah, go ahead and suggest one.
Can I suggest Michigan? And I really hesitate to say
worse than
this.
Their non-conference, you're saying?
Yeah, or just maybe not as good as expected. And I hesitate to say it because I really respect Xavier Simpson and Teskey and Livers. Like, they've got some good players. But they're going to be going through the conference for the first time, and this is going to be Juwan Howard's. I almost said Juwan Morgan. Stop myself. This is going to be Juwan Howard's kind of first trip through. It's tough your first time going through the Big Ten when he doesn't have a lot of deep knowledge, and Phil Martelli is not a guy with deep knowledge of the Big Ten, so they're obviously going to be relying on their holdover assistants. That to me is, with the margins so small in the Big Ten, that seems like a team that could maybe drop a few more games than you would think. Maybe not. Maybe. I mean, they've got the experience on the court to maybe compensate for it, but that's one place I would look.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to fall off. Yeah, in terms of the others who
Brian just wants to get out of here.
All right, whatever. We're just guessing, honestly. But no, I think I would agree that Michigan may be playing over its head and caught some teams early that have a lot of younger players and may not be what they are in 6-8 weeks. So I don't think that's unfair. A veteran team playing, like a North Carolina team with a lot of young guys and beating them and rocketing up the rankings as a result.
Plus North Carolina's just not good.
Yeah, no, North Carolina's not playing well. I mean, they'll be better in 2 months. They've got so much talent. They just, they'll be better. But
yeah,
Iowa's an interesting one. I mean, depending on what comes out about what Bohannon decides to do. I mean, they won at Iowa State. But they lost to DePaul, who's been better than people thought. But Garza's playing amazing, and they got guys that can shoot it if they get hot. So they might be one that maybe if you look at some of their performance in the non-conference wasn't very good. They did beat Texas Tech, who looked good the other night, but they're kind of an odd one. They're a big swing team. I think their range of outcomes is pretty wide.
Ryan from Sally, we are supposed to be relying heavily on our bigs this year, but looking at what the other Big Ten big men are doing, wondering if we are a little soft. How do our big men compare with the bigs on the other Big Ten teams?
Well, I think they'll step up. It depends on, Trayce Jackson-Davis has been elite, so I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. The question is,
and our guys definitely aren't soft.
No,
it won't be because they're soft. Maybe because they're slow. But not because they're soft.
And that's the other thing is who steps up to be that second level guy. Joey Bronk has, he's had flashes, but he's also had He's had stretches where he's played terribly. Duran, it looks like hasn't been healthy. Race Thompson has played some where I think he's been impressive. Justin Smith has sunk down to the 4 and played well. Some, it's going to depend on who becomes that second level guy. Is Justin really going to be a wing, or is he going to slip down to the 4 and help Trayce out? Or is a guy like, Race or Demezi or somebody else gonna step up and get more minutes? Or I'm sorry, not Demezi, but Jerome Hunter going to get more minutes inside. It's really going to depend. I mean, it's Trayce Jackson-Davis' show on the block this year. The question is, who's going to be the other guy that earns those minutes next to him? So we'll see. It hasn't played out yet quick enough, and we're going to find that out probably by early January. Who's going to establish themselves as the other guy down there?
There are some solid big guys in the league, though. I mean, you look at Ken Palm, where it does the Big Ten All-Conference. 4 of the 5 are big guys. There's Wesson, Garza, Jalen Smith, and Teskey. And that doesn't even include Georgie. Oturu's playing good for Minnesota.
Rutgers has a bunch of just goons in there.
So yeah, it's definitely a league that's got a lot of big guys. So I think in that regard, IUs aren't going to be at the complete upper echelon with those guys, depending, outside of Trayce potentially. But yeah, there's a lot of good big guys. I assume this is a comment in the chat, or you're amusing yourself with your comment about Rutgers.
No. Coach in the chat, I want to be referred to as H from now on, not host, co-host, or whatever. Positionless broadcasters or podcasters.
That's a good one. It's a good one.
Okay, so Joel. Okay, goons. I'm just talking about kind of
big, tough, strong guys.
Yes, the big, tough Big Ten guys. Like Bronk at times is kind of a goon. That's what you want is, someone that can just. Michigan State always has those guys. They
big,
can just
tough,
go in. Yeah,
athletic,
they're tough. They're not that skilled, but man, you're gonna really
when you
feel having played.
Yeah,
them.
When you get fouled, it feels like a thunderbolt hit you. I mean, it's and it discourages you from going in there anymore, which is exactly the purpose.
Yeah. Okay, so let's roll through the rest of these. I like this question from Patrick. It says, lots of talk about streamlining the rotation, but I think the slow starts are more of an issue. Do you think a defensive-focused smaller lineup, like the ones that help us came back versus UConn, would help the issue? And it's really easy when you talk about the starting lineup to say, it doesn't matter who starts. It only matters who finishes.
I would agree.
Unless you're consistently getting off to slow starts, and then maybe you want to switch that up. So is it time? And look, part of this is when Rob is healthy, he's going to start. I think we all agree with that.
Well, and you're going to start Trayce coming off the bench, and
there is an argument to be made that maybe you want that. I can see an argument for bringing Devonte in off the bench. I agree. You're going to have Rob, Trayce, and Justin in your starting lineup. Those three guys are written in pen. Who else would you put in the starting lineup to try and get off to better starts? With the knowledge that all guys are going to play, and clearly Archie's going to ride the hot hand down the stretch because he didn't even have Trayce in the game the last 4 or 5 minutes against UConn until he put him in for the final minute. So, Andy, do you have a hypothesis for who might be able to get us off to better starts? Because I'm at the point where I'd like to see something, just a different mix, a different style at the beginning of games.
I think the challenge comes from, and I feel like we're beating this to death a little bit, but some of Brunk's challenges from a ball screen standpoint, I think really put the defense in some tough positions. And if you're going to continue to do that, I don't know. It played really well in that one stretch against UConn, but it's like if you got somebody out there who's going to, puts you at risk to give up points based on the way they're defending, you almost need that person to be a guy who really can get off to a good start offensively. And he's not necessarily a guy that they want to run a ton of stuff through. I mean, they'll dump it in, but as Archie said, he got back to, really basic stuff of run the floor well, carving out space early in the possession, and then they can get it to him in those scenarios. So that's kind of the swing piece of that I would say is if you wanted to take somebody out, he feels like the candidate because he struggles defensively, isn't going to be a focal point of the offense, and go at it from there. But that would be the only thought that I would have.
Yeah, and I think just being able to have Rob Finney back in there will settle everything down, and that alone will probably help Indiana get off to better starts.
Yep.
Okay, final question. This is from JD. Saw a line on the game, talking about the Northwestern game. It has Indiana at -17. Most like Indiana to win. I think we all assume that it is win or skies falling tomorrow, Friday. I think that's a fair assessment. Would you bet that line, though? Andy, would you take the points? Or would you lay the points with Indiana against the Cornhuskers?
That's a huge spread.
It's a big spread.
I don't know if I'd take that.
I don't know if I would be inclined not to. I think it's a double-digit win. I certainly hope it will be. But, yeah, 17 feels like a lot. Now, the flip side of that is Nebraska has gotten blown out by any number of teams, including, they lost by 17 at Georgia Tech, who's not all that good. They lost by 19 to George Mason on a neutral court. So, and they lost by 19 to UC Riverside. So perhaps I'm talking myself into it. I don't know.
My
they
gut
have been
says
prone
yes.
to getting run out of the place, but
I know my head says no, just because it's so many points. But I really think we're gonna kill them. Like, I think it's a great just domination spot for us coming off that hard fought victory against UConn, being back home. I think there'll be some good energy. I really think we're going to dominate them. So I think if push came to shove, I think I would lay the points. I think we're going to play really well. And I've been kind of pessimistic the last few games. I feel pretty optimistic about this one.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna. I don't know if it'll get to 17. Maybe it'll get to 13 or something like that. But I hate. I mean, I don't really gamble on sports, but I hate whenever we're doing pick 'em for. Like we do NFL pick 'em every week and stuff like that on the website. I hate laying big points. That's just because you're just asking for a late touchdown or a late 3-pointer or whatever.
A late banked in 3. That's probably what'll happen.
And if they get up big and they take guys out and put the walk-ons in, you're just asking for Nebraska to run off points at the end and make it look closer than it was. I mean, look at Wisconsin, Indiana. That was a 30-point game and it ended at 20. Yeah. I mean, those things happen at the end of games when a team gets up big and relaxes.
Yeah. Kent says Nebraska, not Northwestern. Sorry. If I said Northwestern, I meant Nebraska.
Oh, yeah, you did in the intro, but whatever.
Okay. Well, I meant Nebraska.
You said Nebraska.
Any final thoughts, guys, before we bounce on out of here? Andy, I think it's just you and me.
Okay.
Because we're being big time by Q over here.
Yep.
Big time. He's got his celebrity.
When the public spotlight calls, Ryan answers. So what are you going to do?
He's there. I have a duty to the people.
Got to give the people what they want.
Yeah.
I have a duty to the people.
You dumbass.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, podcaster H. Okay.
All right.
Let's get out of here.
All right, guys.
All right. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow night. All right.
See everybody.
Later, guys.
Oh, go say hi to Megan. She's going to be on hand selling programs at Assembly Hall. Go say hi to her. Give her a hug. Tell her hi. Bye, everybody.